Hey guys and girls, PTK back with another video. It's been a little while, it's been over a month since I've actually filmed any long form content at all. A little bit longer since I've done any flesh and blood content. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of my pickups recently, kind of what's happening with flesh and blood and my thoughts on where flesh and blood is heading into the Worlds, which is going to be in America literally next month. So first we'll talk about some of the recent sets. We've had the Mastery Pack Guardian come out, which was a bit of a kind of supplemental set, I'm really going to call it. And of course we've just had Super Slam, which is a wrestling themed set that's just dropped last week or the week before. I haven't really opened too much. I opened a few loose packs, anything special at all. But I want to talk a little bit about some of the reprints that have been happening and why reprints, are a good thing and why, maybe there's some drawbacks to some of these. So we obviously got the new Horizon with the new art, which is really nice. I think that's a really nice card. We also got Flick Knives reprinted, which I think is a good reprint. I remember when it absolutely went mental, when the Hunted came out, when I was in Prague, I think it was the world premiere. That went pretty mad. And then you've got Plow Under and Felling, which I think is a bit of a weird reprint considering Rosetta still is in print and they can just print more. There's no serialized cards, there's no treasure packs, there's no reason why they can't just go, right, let's just print some more Rosetta. Instead of that, they've reprinted it essentially 2 sets ahead, which I just think is a strange move. It's not that the reprint itself, like the idea of the reprints is fine, but like when the set is still in print, it's just a bit weird. There's no reason why they can't just print more Rosetta. So a bit of a strange one, that one. And then you've got Warmongers as well, which makes sense, to be honest. Warmongers makes sense, obviously. That came out a little while ago now, and it became quite an expensive card. I would suspect, following from what they've been doing really with the Majestic to the Legendary prints, makes sense. It continues the kind of theme that we've had for a while. I think the Warmongers has dropped down to around £30 now, which is, I think actually it was more than double that at one point. So it's a good reprint. It's done its job. But yeah, that makes sense. And there's some reprints do make sense. And I think most of the reprints that they've ever done so far in the Flesh and Blood journey, they make sense. One of the things that I found out recently actually was that History Pack 1 is still actually at distro. I'm not saying that's at every single distributor, but my distributor, they actually have History Pack, as well as Uprising and Dusk Till Dawn. So I would like to see that in stores. I'm not seeing stores buy that. I don't know if it's because they don't think it's going to be worth it. I know it didn't do very well when it first came out, and it was kind of like wondering why. I didn't really see too much of it. Now, I can't remember if they've released the print numbers for that, but I imagine I would think it would be quite big because it was a reprint. Now, it did come out quite a few years ago now. There are no foils and it is white border, but in terms of just getting cards into players' hands, I think you've still got you've still got big cards in there, all the legendaries, you've still got E-Strike there, you've still got CNC. It was a very good reprint set. It wasn't well received at the time, but I think it was released maybe too early. I think that was planned when things were going a little bit mental. Maybe if they'd released it a year or two later, I think it would have been more well received. And of course, we never got History Pack 2 in English. We did get it in the European languages, which most of them have now since been dropped. So History Pack 2 probably won't happen in English. I don't think there's a reason for it to be honest. Same reason why Everfest Unlimited didn't get printed, or it did, but it was very small and they destroyed the rest of the print run. Or so we've been told anyway, at least. But I think Super Slam as a set is good. I think the reprints in there is really good. It's not my kind of theme. I'm huge into like the fantasy artwork, cards. I think I've got some. Do I have some cards here? I was going to send a Flesh and Blood card to be submitted. Where is it? There we go. This is one of my favourite artworks, which is the Helm of Isen's Peak, which is giving Skyrim vibes. Also kind of like Pine. Airwick air freshener, but they do ace labels, so I'm interested to see what that will happen with that. But that's the kind of artwork I like. I like the fantasy artwork. That's what got me into the game. Now, sets like Super Slam, it's just a simple skip for me. It's not a big deal. It's not every set's going to appeal to some people. I really like Mistveil. I thought Hunter was really cool. Do you know what? I've actually liked every set. The only set I didn't really like was Bright Lights, but I'm not huge into the whole steampunk mech kind of thing. But that's fine, I can just skip it. The same as Super Slam, it's not a big issue. I'm not hearing many people opening or cracking it, but that could just be kind of where the game is at the moment. I saw somebody trying to sell a Rainbow Foil 9 quad PCG 9.5 Heart of Fiendel Rainbow Foil. They tried it for 600, now they dropped it to 400. It's kind of about reading the market, reading the room as such. That kind of thing's not really going to do too well, especially in the UK anyway. Graded cards are not hugely popular in the UK anyway, but especially in like for Flesh and Blood, you know, it's a player's market at the end of the day. So, you know, grading is still popular, but not as popular as it has been, and maybe it will be. So raw cards like that, especially when people want to play with the card as well. You know, if you're trying to sell that, it's going to be a hard sell for sure. I've found that out in the past. If you're grading to sell cards, you're really going to want 9.5s and plus, and you kind of want to go for like the equipment in the player slabs as well. That's kind of the move if you're going to do that anyway. Or just simply grade just for your own collection, which I have been doing, I always do, have done for a while, and I'm going to continue to do so. I've got some submissions that I'm going to be doing soon. But yeah, Super Slam was a great set. Martial Pack Garden, I did open a box that actually I did pull a Marvel. I can't remember what it was called, but it looked pretty cool. Again, it's a bit of a supplemental set, so if you're not into Guardian, then it's kind of like, that you can skip that. But I like the size of the box, I like the idea of it. If I remember rightly, it's the same size as the archive boxes. I like the size of that. I like a product being like that. It reminds me of the Japanese like special sets, which is just a nice little box. If you want to crack, you want to get some, you know, staples in. I think using that kind of method and process in the future, if you want to do like history pack, for instance, where it is like an archive pack or a history pack or whatever it is, you know, Yu-Gi-Oh! Do them with their reprint sets. They did like Dark Beginning 1, I think was the first reprint set, and Dark Revelation. The pack contained more cards, and you got, I think it was like 15 cards a pack, for instance. Obviously, Flesh and Blood already have quite a few cards per pack, but I think that kind of box and product just to get like cards into hands, I think is a great thing. In terms of where Flesh and Blood really is, I think I've definitely been a little bit more absent than usual, simply because Pokemon is just absolutely mental right now, and I've kind of been really focused on Pokemon, as well as Yu-Gi-Oh! As well. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has become my second best-selling TCG, so I've had to allocate time and funds to ensure that the growth of that makes sense for me as a business. But Flesh and Blood is still in my heart. I've had people ask me if I've left Flesh and Blood, I am still in Flesh and Blood. Look, I'm never going to leave at the end of the day. If you're in my Discord, then you know I'm very active on there anyway still. Just because I haven't been making the content on Flesh and Blood. I haven't really been buying collections either. I bought one recently, which was mostly just older stuff. But not really too much of the newer stuff. So, you know, I'm still very much, I think the game is absolutely amazing. It's still the premier competitive TCG, and I'm excited for Worlds. It's going to be next month. It's my first solo trip to America off the continent of Europe. I've been around, well, since 2016. I solo traveled Japan in 2016 for 3 months. And I've been all around the world, but it has been with friends or family or partners. So it hasn't been solo. I've only done a couple of trips, which was a couple of European trips for other events. So I'm excited. I'm a little bit nervous. Don't get me wrong. I've heard some bad things about Philadelphia, honestly, but it should be fine. I'm excited to meet a lot of my friends and, you know, viewers and, you know, people that I've known from America in the Flesh and Blood stratosphere for years now. So it'd be great. I'm excited. I'm excited to go down to Reading Terminal Market. I'm excited to have a Philly cheesesteak. I'm doing a few days in New York as well, so hopefully, you know, that'll be a great time as well. I'm excited, honestly. I'm very excited. Being in that atmosphere of a Flesh and Blood event, there is nothing like it. I was talking to Joe, shout out Joe, who is, I think he recently got his level 2 judge. He was working at the Pro Tour and that. Don't think he's at Worlds, but I think he's at Valencia. And just talking about the atmosphere of an event, and it's just, it's like a drug, honestly. It's addictive. It really is great. Now, I do a lot of card shows. I'm always at card shows. For Pokemon, I'm always filming content, short form and long form. And I do a lot of card shows. I was at Reading last weekend, and I was at Kent the weekend before. But Flesh and Blood events, there's just something about it, and it's electric, it's magical. And to this day, and I've done events for other card games all around the world, and this is something different. This really feels different. So I'm very excited to see an American run Flesh and Blood event, because I know the guys in Europe are absolutely smashing it with their events. I've heard a lot of people say that the European events are a lot better. So I think it's Star City Games. I know they generally do events for Fab in the same building as other events they're hosting. I'm not sure, but we'll see anyway. I'm excited to see what happens. In terms of pickups, I've picked up a couple of nice little things recently. Obviously, I picked up a couple copies of Helm of Isen's Peak. It's not really played very much. It's just a really nice artwork. It reminds me of Skyrim, Lord of the Rings. So it's a card that I just really like. And we'll go for a couple other bits, which is, so we got a gold foil Goliath Gauntlet. You can't really see this, honestly. The lighting that I have is pretty bad. It's getting very dark very early now in England, so it's time of the gloomy, depressing time. But we got a gold foil. It is a quad plus, so it's got 9.5 on centering, corners and edges, and then 10 on surface, which is pretty nice. 10 on surface is kind of maybe the worst of the ones that you want to get a 10 on. But that was a good price. I picked up a Breeze Rider Boots, cold foil 9.5 for my crew first edition set. Still trying to get through that. A couple of cards that I still need to get and organise. That isn't a quad, unfortunately. It is 9 on surface. But I already bought these graded. And then lastly, if I'm going to drop it. But lastly was Skullbone Cross Wrap Quad PCG cold foil from Arcane Rising First Edition. This is the PCG old label, so I'm going to be sending this in with my Extended Art Fiendel Spring Tunic BGS card, and then a couple of other Beggar cards that I just want to get into the new, PCG labels, which is exciting. Again, just a couple of other really cards. I think the Goliath Gauntlet is such an iconic card from Alpha. I paid £200 for that in a gold foil, which I think is a very good price for a quad plus. I don't know how many copies there are in a 9.5 quad plus. Probably maybe not too many. Is it 120 copies of them printed? I assume that most of them aren't in circulation. So there's probably still some that aren't. But it's a great price. The Skullbone Cross Wrap was 300, which I think is a really good price for an Arc First Edition. Obviously, it's not the best legendary. It's probably maybe the weakest, apart from the Arc Knight Skull Cap. But I think that's started to see a bit more play recently. But it's not the best, but it's a nice card. It's iconic. These cards, this is whack. Welcome to Wraith, Arcane Rising, Crucible of War. This is Flesh and Blood history, these cards here. This is what has defined Flesh and Blood throughout the years. Breeze Rider Boots has been used by Katsu a lot of the time. Now, none of these cards are extremely used very often anymore, but they're iconic, I think, in the collector space. There are still collectors out there. There are still collectors buying. I think the Shiana Cold Foil 9.5, it was a quad plus, actually, and I wish I picked it up because mine isn't a quad. That went for 300 as well. And then quite a lot of other little bits I've been selling that I've been seeing for what I think is a really affordable price to buy into the market, to be honest. I think, as I've said time and time again, the changing of hands, the changing of the guard, loads of collectors that maybe are out the game now, or maybe collectors that aren't collecting actively anymore, or people that simply bought into the game, that bought into a game they thought was going to be different than it is. Maybe they thought they were buying into the next Magic the Gathering, I'm not sure, but either way, these cards are still amazing. Their price going down, it just incentivizes me to want to buy them now. And the fact that I can actually acquire them and actually afford to buy them, because some of these cards were, notoriously extremely expensive and hard to find when people were hoarding all of the copies of them. But now is a great time if you're a collector, and, even if it's just the modern stuff. Look, we've talked about this before. A lot of the collectors are going to like the new Marvel stuff. It's a lot shinier. Why would you? Don't get me wrong. These cards are really nice, but they're basic cold foils. The Iron Rot stuff from Alpha, even the Iron Rot stuff from a Monarch. Look, it's not the classiest stuff, but I like it. I like the traditional style of cold foils. I prefer the older style. I'm not a huge fan of gold foils. I own maybe about 5. One of which is the Break and Scales that I picked up at Pro Tour. And, the cards that I'm going to keep in my collection, they have memories attached to them. Whether or not Breeze Rider Boots, obviously it's Katsu can I call myself a Katsu main? Because I haven't really played for a while, but I'll be doing side events at Worlds anyway, and I'll probably take my deck just in case, just to play a little bit. I might take my One Piece deck as well, and my Gundam deck, just in case people want to play. But I'm still picking these cards up, you know, I'm still picking up singles that I like as well, trying to complete my play sets for my binders as well. I've managed to organise all my binders from Welcome to Wraith all the way up to Rosetta, and I just want one of every single card, and then the lower rarity stuff, so I just want play sets, really. And I'm just picking up stuff here and there. Look, it's not a race, like, you know, it's you do it as and when you want, you know, when you can afford the cards, maybe the cards come up, you know, on auction, you think, you know what, that's a good time to buy in. It's, you know, events are a really good time because you can trade cards in that you don't want anymore. Maybe you've changed a deck. A lot of the people that have sold to me will sell a deck and then buy into another hero, for instance. Maybe it's LL'd, or maybe they're just not fancy it. Maybe they've tried it and just, you know, not into it. That's the great thing about this game. And, you know, at times it can be quite expensive, don't get me wrong. I think the reprints are starting to come, and they're trickling in, and, you know, I think Felon's like £5 the new one, or maybe less than that now. I pulled one and I think it was about £5. But at the end of the day, getting cards into players' hands and so people can play, build decks, play at their local events, go to bigger events, regional events, and international events. That's really what the game is about. And most of the people that I know that play this game also collect. You know, they might want a higher rarity cards for the, you know, they might want the Marvels. You know, I've seen people that have like fabled CNCs, they're blinging their deck out. And that's what it's about. You know, you don't have to do it all at once. It's not about wanting everything all at once at the end of the day. It's just picking things up as and when you please, you know. A shout out to a good friend of mine, Tom, aka Souls TCG. He's doing a 9.5 alpha set. And it's, you know, he's doing it in his own time, on his own accords. It's when he can pick the cards up, he does. You know, he picked up the Heart. He picked up the Heart fairly recently, although I'm not sure if that's public knowledge. So, but whoops, I've said it. So he is unfortunately not coming to Worlds, but, you know, I think that's a fair thing. He's probably got some weddings anyway. But, you know, he waited for the right time. He waited for one to come up, and it happened. You know, and that's what it's about, honestly. I think, you know, people put too much pressure on themselves to get everything all at once, and they get down about, I'm seeing a lot of people are getting very negative about the game, and look, I don't agree with every decision's been made. Obviously, none of us really do, to be honest. That's just the way the world works, but it's the way it is. So you got to suck it up or just shut up at the end of the day, because it's just, it gets boring to a point where it's like, there's being constructive and sort of being upset about something and wanting to discuss it and get other people's thoughts. Then there's just simply just being very negative. And I don't think this game needs that, honestly. I think there's enough negative stuff in the world. And I see stuff across, I know I don't use Twitter myself, but I see stuff on Twitter and Fab and some of the Discords, and some people, you know, being very sort of aggressive and negative, and, you know, we don't need it at the end of the day. But yeah, it's just what I've just been picking up, some little bits of updates. I'm really, really sorry that I've been very absent. I've just, as I said, Pokemon's been really busy, Yu-Gi-Oh's been busy, card shows, and just life, honestly. You know, I've been away quite a lot of events, so it's just kind of like getting into that mindset. And look, I'll be honest, I've sat down here tons and tons of times to start filming, and I just don't know what to say. So I've had a little bit of a creative block in terms of content. I know that did the Welcome to Wraith Collector's Guide, and we will be doing Arcane Rising. I have got some stuff filmed for that, but I might be wearing different t-shirts in it because I'm going to have to mould clips together, but we'll see what happens. As anyways, you know, have a great day, and please like and subscribe, and